Hello, my name's Claire Tyler from Claire Tyler Couture. Today I'd like to talk to you about the continuous bias binding technique. This is a technique that allows you to make a long strip of bias binding from a small square of fabric. So let's get started. So the first thing you need is a square of fabric. It can be any size square you like, but just make sure that it is a real perfect square. Next thing we're going to do is to draw a line from corner to corner. Like this, and cut your square into two triangles. So we now have two triangles. You're going to take one of the triangles and fold it right sides together with the other one. So you're going to have this sort of shape. Shall I do that again? Okay, so you have your two triangles and you're going to take one of them and fold it over so your fabrics are right sides together. I know I've got no right and wrong side on this fabric, but you can see that. Now I'm going to pin these two pieces together and we're going to stitch them with a 1/4 inch seam. So come back to me and I'll show you how to set up the sewing machine. Okay, so we're going to set up a machine now ready to do our 1/4 inch seam. There are a couple of ways you could do this. If you've got a 1/4 inch foot, like this one here, this will allow you to do a nice 1/4 inch seam. It's got a guide on the right hand side here. You can line your fabric up to this guide and that will stitch a really accurate 1/4 inch seam. The second way you can do it is just to move your needle over to the right in this machine, move it over to 5.5, and then you can just line up your fabric to the edge of your normal foot and that will also give you a 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to put the needle back to the middle, just 3.5, and I'm going to use my 1/4 inch foot today. I'm just going to put the foot on the machine. You want to stitch this seam with a fairly small stitch. I'm going to go down to 2.2. And then I'm just going to stitch the seam. And remember to always stop with your needle down before you take your pins out. And you can see I'm just lining the edge of the fabric up to the edge of the guide. And that will do a nice neat 1/4 inch seam. When you get to the end, we're then going to, there's my lovely seam. I'm now going to take that to the iron and press that seam open. So if you want to go ahead and do that and then move on to the next bit. Okay, so once you've pressed your seam open, then we're then going to draw a series of lines that are parallel to the bias line. So this is the bias edge here. So that's the cut that you did right at the beginning when you cut your two triangles in half. So we're going to draw lines, and I'm going to do my lines 1.5 inches or 36mm apart. You can do them any size you like, but just for this demonstration I'm going to do mine 1.5 inches. And you're going to go all the way across. Oops. Hold on to your ruler nice and tightly. So those are your lines all parallel to the bias line. I would then suggest, just to help you with the next process, especially if it's the first time you've done it, that you do another line that's parallel to the straight grain line, and that needs to be 1/4 inch or 6 mils from the edge. And we're going to do that line on both ends of the fabric. I'm just going to continue that line. Didn't go right to the edge there. Okay, so that's that one, and then I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay, so we've got parallel to the bias line, we've got our lines drawn at 1.5 inches or 36 millimeters, and on the straight grain lines we've got them at 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. So that's what your fabric should look like, and your lines are all on the wrong side. Just a little note, don't use a pen that's going to disappear with heat or anything like that, like the friction pens, because we're going to be ironing this in a sec, and the last thing we want to do after all this hard work is if our lines all disappear. So that's our fabric all marked up. We now need to fold our fabric to stitch the second seam. So I'm going to turn it over so the right side is showing and fold it into a square. So you can see here that all the lines match up nicely. Just get that pulled out there. Okay, so the lines are all matching up nicely there. But to do a continuous bias binding, we need to slip one line onto the next one. So we want to put this line onto this one over here. So I'm going to just slide this over. So the line that was lining up with this one is now onto this line here. Once you've done that, so you've slipped your line across, you've got like an offset square now. You're then going to put your fabric's right sides together. And we're going to be stitching another 1/4 inch seam, but you just want to make sure that your lines are all in the right place. So I'm going to put a pin through here where those lines all join together, and make sure that it is in the same position on the other side. So I know that when I stitch my 1/4 inch seam, they're going to be exactly lined up. So we're going to pin along this line here, and then we're going to go to the machine and stitch. That's not lined up. We're going to go to the machine and stitch our second 1/4 inch seam. So we're back at the machine. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on the machine. My stitch length is 2.2, and I'm going to stitch the seam, stopping with the needle down and taking the pins out as I go. And then once you get to the end of the seam, take this to the iron and you'll need to press it open. Okay, so this is quite an awkward shape to press now, so you may find it easier to press this seam open over something like a sleeve roll, so you can get it nice and flat. Once you've done that, you can then take your scissors and start cutting along your line. And you're just going to keep going round until you have a nice continuous piece of bias binding. So all the lines are meeting up, so that's always good. So I'm going to keep going, so you can see the bigger the square, the more bias you would get. Also, the less joins you get. I mean, the joins are not really a problem at all, but you would get less joins with a bigger square. So we're nearly there. A bit further. Goodness, that small square has really produced a lot of bias binding. Okay. Here we go, last little bit. So there we go, all of that bias binding from that small square of fabric. Now I'm going to show you how to make double folded binding with this piece now. And for that I'm going to use a bias binding maker. I'm just going to cut that end off. So this is a really nifty little gadget to help you make your bias binding double folded. They come in lots of different sizes. This is an 18mm one. So this is half the size of the binding I've made. So I made my binding 36mm. So that'll work really well with an 18mm bias binding. But they come in different sizes. They come in 12mm and 25mm. So as long as you make your binding twice the size of your bias binding maker, you'll be fine. So what I'm going to do, it's always good to have your fabric cut at an angle so that you can put the point of the fabric through, slide it through, and then if you just grab a pin, you can ease the fabric through and you can see it coming out of the end here. And what this little gadget does is it folds the fabric into the middle. So all you need to do then is get your iron, take this to the ironing board, get your iron, and as it's coming out you just need to press it and you will have meters of double folded bias binding or edging your garments. So that's how you can make a long strip of bias binding using the continuous bias binding technique. I've also shown you how to use the bias binding maker to make double folded bias, but you can also use this binding to neaten your seams and hems using Hong Kong binding. If you'd like to learn how to do this technique, you can follow my video in the top right hand corner. All the products we've used today will be listed down below the video. Do like, share and subscribe to my channel so that you can find out what else we're going to be doing. You can also follow me on social media, details are down below. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you soon.